Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, that's good. Um, let's wait maybe for a minute or two. No? I see some people just joining. Let's try Zoom this time around. I like Zoom because you can change the background, even if you have a messy background, people don't know. So that's why I like it. So let's try it. And usually the connections are better based on my experience. Okay, let's wait for one more minute. Let me just share my screen now. Can you guys also see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. All right, that's good. Okay, I think we can start. I mean, again, we're recording this session, so um, if I know some people have emailed me that they can't join us. So again, apologies. Something important came up. I had to push this to 6. It was a personal matter. So thanks for being patient. No? Yeah, I think we're recording. No? Yeah. So anyway, this session, I think we might not. It might be a short session. No? It's basically some few housekeeping stuff and then also I won't go through the entire module 3 because if you see the suggested pace, no, we just started. In a sense, I suggested that we start last Thursday, so I don't expect everyone to finish module 3. So I'll go through the first half, uh, maybe until the free markets, no? Until market fundamentalism. Then we'll reserve the rest for next week, and maybe we can introduce module 4 next week as well. This afternoon, this evening, actually, I wanted to discuss also your upcoming assignment 2. No? Anyway, so again, few house rules. Again, this was suggested by the other teams, but Zoom has more functions. No? So there's actually a raise hand function here. This is my first time to host a Zoom meeting. So I've attended hundreds of Zoom meetings, but not as a host. So bear with me if I fudge the controls, no? Or just let me know if I'm doing something wrong or if I'm choppy. No? So you can use the codes that I presented last week, or you can raise your hand if you want to say something, because there's a control for that. Again, please let me know. No, I think for assignment there were a few, one or two, who said they were having some issues. So next time, maybe I might be more strict. I would probably ask for proof that you finished the assignment at this particular time, but you had internet connectivity issues. That's why you could not really submit them. So I will ask for a screenshot of some sort for a date modified to show that that was the last time you modified the file. So if that's okay with everyone. So this is the same for assignment 2 and your succeeding outputs as well. So announcements, module 4. Again, as I said, module 3, I expect, or I suggested that you guys finish this by October 4. If you finish module 3, well and good, you can rest a bit. I'll cover module 4 from October 5 to, I suggested that you cover module 4 from October 5 to 18. I'll post module 4 on October 5, maybe start with the first 2. But if I'm finished with population and demography, maybe I'll also post them, but I plan to post them no later than October 12th. So we can have a good pace, because I don't want to overburden you. Module 4 will have more reading materials, more videos. No? It's more, it will be more intense in terms of reading and material. But more exciting because you go to the actual interventions, because everything we'll be learning from modules 1 to 3 are basically examining the problems, also measuring them, and some models. Module 4 really gets into the actual policies that government has for certain topics. This one also, if you're wondering, I was under the assumption that for the final integrated output, the groupings for NSTP, Big Kiss, as well as marketing will actually be the same. I was just a bit surprised that the NSTP groupings in marketing are not, for the most part, they are the same groupings. But I got emails saying that in some cases they're not. So what we'll do is we'll follow the same, for SocSc13, we'll follow, for the final output, we'll follow the same NSTP Big Kiss groupings, not the marketing, in case they're different. I think for the most part, they're the same. So if you have questions, just let me know. So again, it will be a common output for NSTP and SocSc13 and marketing for the most part. But again, some of you might have different marketing groups as NSTP or SocSc13. I think most of your NSTP Big Kiss formators have already sent out guidance, no, for the final integrated output. We will follow that because it's a common output. So whatever you receive, whatever guidance you receive from them will be the same for SocSc13 for the final integrated output. Remember, we only have 3 outputs for this course. Beyond the discussion, we have assignment 1, which you submitted yesterday. Assignment 2, which I'll discuss later on, and this one. So this is, in a sense, assignment 3. It's your final integrated output. It's your major output for both NSTP, Big Kiss, and SocSc13, and as well as marketing for the most part. So just a recap, you've seen this, you've been given this by your NSTP Big Kiss formators. It's the same thing. So you, as part of your Big Kiss requirement, you'll be engaging with a livelihood intervention in your particular communities. I know all of you have different assigned areas, so which is good. So basically, you'll go through your livelihood interventions, and you'll dig deeper into several questions. Basically, scanning the area, examining the livelihood intervention, what were the issues addressed, what happened, the impact as well, and what lessons you've learned. This is a good actually tie-up with your CBMS exercise assignment. I wanted to actually discuss that, the assignment 1, but I'm still waiting for a few more submissions, late submissions. And there's one, I won't say who, there's one classmate, one student, I won't tell you if it's in this class or section E, that got COVID. So he's asking for an extension. So of course, that's really unfortunate. So I won't discuss homework 1 yet because some might still be submitting late. So groupings again will be, what about assignment 2? I did a survey, thanks to all of you. I think most of you, or all of you, actually submitted that. So obviously overwhelming. Actually, all of you. I was the only one who said no. Just so that it's not 100%. I actually also participated in the poll, but just so that's not 100%. Let's go back to the slideshow. So assignment 2, again, this is not the same as your final integrated output, which is, you can call it assignment 3. Um, the groupings will be the same because you wanted it that way. No? So, which is good because, I mean, in preparation for your final integrated output, uh, this is sort of a warm up. No? You guys build like teamwork, your team dynamics in preparation for your final output, which weighs more. No? I think it's 30%. So deadline is October 19, 2020, 11:59 p.m. as well. Since it's a group effort, I will require more, no? more work for this one, and that's why I'm announcing it now. Uh, and I'll be assigning the specific topics in the next few days. So I expect two outputs for each group. Again, it's a paper, not more than 10 pages. If you can do it in five, much better. Can be single or double space. Again, same fonts, Times New Roman 12, or if you want, sorry, that's supposed to be Arial 11, no? Or Calibri 11, not 12. So sorry, I'll correct that. I'll post this anyway in Canvas, so I'll correct that. So it's Times New Roman 12 or font 11 Arial or Calibri. Uh, and I also want you to submit a summary video, which summarizes the contents of the paper. It will be posted in Canvas, and the students will, well, so if you record it, hopefully you can upload it on YouTube, so it's easily embedded in Canvas. And then I'll post it on Canvas so that the students will be able to comment on the videos. Again, the format will be up to you as long as it doesn't go over 5 minutes. I don't expect it to be like a super intense work like an animated video, but feel free if you want to. No, there are some automated cartoon or animated videos there out there. No? So if you want, you can just do what I'm doing, like a verbal presentation with a slideshow, or be creative. It's up to you. I don't want to burden you guys. The point is provide a video summary so that others can comment. So basically, if you're a person, if you're an individual, you're expected to comment on the other, not on your own video, but on the other videos your classmates will be producing. And then what will you discuss? Module 4 is about policies. No? So module 1 to 3, basically you're starting with challenges. How do you measure the challenges? And then some theories for development or economic growth. Module 4 is really all about policies. What policies government has to respond to the challenges. So we'll discuss 4. I think in this class you have 5 or 6 groupings. Let me go back again to the groupings. So I will have 5 groups, 5 topics actually. So if you're 6 groups, the agriculture piece, I'll be assigning one as for the tarification law, one for the Agri-Agra Reform Act. So if you're only 5 groups, if I assign you the agriculture sector, you can choose between the tarification law or the Agri-Agra Reform Credit Act of 2009. In my opinion, the tarification law is more interesting because it's very controversial. Very, very controversial. I won't tell you my position, but it's a very controversial bill. On taxation and fiscal policy, there's 2, So for one group, I'll assign the CREATE bill, which just passed the House, but hasn't passed the Senate yet. So it's not a law yet. It's still being deliberated on. So for the other group, we'll be discussing fiscal and taxation. I'll be assigning the trade law. Again, another interesting, very controversial reform. Or controversial. That's a law already. For population, there's the RH bill, RH Act of 2012, Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Act. And then for SMEs, there's also a law. It's a Magna Carta for micro, small, and medium enterprises. So I'll be assigning the groups maybe randomly. based on the groupings I got from your NSTP formators. I'll entertain questions later on. Let me just finish this. So when you're assigned a particular policy, what are you supposed to do with it? The paper should cover the following. Again, I'll post the complete guidelines on Canvas soon. Paper should cover the following. What's the goal? What are the objectives of the law, the bill, or the policy? Forget about plan. No? When I was thinking of this, I also included some plans, but no longer. No? So it's limited to the policy. Either a bill or a law. When you're saying bill, it's not yet enacted into law. It's still being deliberated. I'll also include in Module 4 a video basically discussing how a particular bill becomes a law, how legislation works in the Philippines. Or maybe you've had Pol Sci already. I'm not sure. But when I was still a MECO student, we had Pol Sci when I was in third year as well. So maybe you haven't discussed yet how particular draft legislation becomes law. So I'll also include a video on that. So there's a difference between a bill and a law. Second point, what development challenge is being targeted to be addressed? So think back to Module 1. I always want when I assign an assignment is for you to connect it to previous modules. So for Module 1, what's being addressed? What are the challenges that the law wants to address? The third is, so how are they also connected to the parameters? You know, and the growth models discussed in Module 3. So how are they related to, let's say, Rostow's stage of development, to Harold Domar, etc. The summary, of course, if you're presenting in your paper the law, I want you to also provide a summary of the most important points. And next, I want you to also discuss the status of the implementation, the results or effects, only if applicable. Because if it's still a bill, then there's no status of implementation. Maybe status of the bill, because you can't have results yet if it's not enacted into law yet. What are the controversies? Most of these, actually all of these, I think, have a lot of controversies, a lot of strong opinions from all sides. And then last 2 points, I want you to assess. Critique the law. What are the strengths, weaknesses? I want you to do research based on the different viewpoints. What are the weaknesses and strengths? In terms, especially on how they have managed or are proposing to respond to the development challenges. What are the strengths and weaknesses? And finally, if you were in a position to amend or amend the law, what will be your recommendations if ever there's a chance to change the law? In many instances in the Philippines, laws are actually amended. The Magna Carta for MSMEs, actually, that's an amendment of previous law. So maybe you're thinking, wow, this is too much. Actually, I am challenging you guys because it's a group effort. So plan to divide the work. If you want, you can really read the law. I encourage you to read the law word for word, page by page. But if it's too lengthy, too complex, legal language is too complex, there are primers available. And I'm planning to have an evolving set of references. And some papers actually are done. Some studies are done by Ateneo professors examining certain laws, like the trade law, the tarification law, UP professors as well. PITS also are, that's a good reference. So I know you guys are Ateneans. I'm an Atenean myself. So I think this is doable for you guys. You might be thinking this is too hard. No, this is actually, you can do this. Again, it's a team effort. There are primers. If ever you find the legalese very, very difficult to understand, again, you can go back to primers. There's a lot of primers out there that you can research on. So I'll assign the before the end of the week, I'll come up with assigned sectors for the different groups. And these are all, we won't be discussing these laws in Module 4. We'll be discussing related policies and the objectives of each of these different sectors, not these different bills per se or laws per se. All right, before I move to Module 3, that's a lot. I will now entertain questions either in the chat box or if you want to talk, please let me know as well. Again, the deck can be accessed through this link. I'll spend 2 minutes. No questions? Again, feel free to do consultations, especially once you've gotten your assigned sector. We can definitely do consultations evenings, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Fridays, 3 to 5. But if those won't work, let me know. Maybe we can set up some other schedule. But again, remember, I have an 8 to 5. I work 8 to 5 every day for USA. So this is only part-time for me. So it would be hard for me to schedule 8 to 5 Monday to Thursday. But Friday afternoons. So no questions. Okay, so I can proceed with Module 3, at least the first half. All right. So Module 3, when I discuss this, I'll follow the same outline as Canvas. So I don't know where you are right now in Canvas, but I was pleasantly surprised by Friday or Saturday. I've gotten emails about the Korean case study already. So some of you have already gone past, most probably, the Korean case studies, which is great. So, but for some of you, maybe not. So we'll see, no? So again, I'll finish the recap of Module 3 next week. Structural Marxist dependency and sustainable development. So for this evening, it will probably be a short session. I'll discuss the classical theories and the neoclassical one, which is the free markets, market fundamentalism. So, and we'll have a case study in Korea. All right. Before I came across this though, on Facebook, before we jump to Module 3, just something interesting for all of you. We talked about poverty lines before. According to PIDS and the Philippine Statistical Authority, this is how they define the different social classes. So the poverty line is almost 11,000, as we discussed last time. So times 2 of the poverty line, they consider lower middle class, times 4, the middle class. This is for a family of 5, by the way. Upper middle times 7, upper but not rich times 12, rich times 20. So just interesting tidbit to share. You can refer back to this again in the deck. I just wanted to share with you guys something related to Module 2. So again, about poverty lines and the Gini as well. So if there are more rich people, there's a lot of rich people compared to the poor, then the Gini is higher. This one, they consider people with 20 times, families with 20 times the lowest poverty line as rich. So almost 220,000 and above. All right, so we go to the classical economic development perspectives. All right, you've seen this in Canvas. There's this gentleman by the name of Rostow. Todaro doesn't really discuss this a lot. So I took some time in Canvas to discuss this. So I lifted this image from your Canvas course. So there's a reference there. So For Rosto, society, when they progress, they follow a country. So they follow a set of, it's linear, it's a linear stage of growth. You have to follow this stage first, then you follow the second stage, third, fourth, fifth. You can't jump. That's his main thesis. Remember, this was done in the early 1950s, I think. So everyone starts with a traditional society. Let me get my laser point. So everyone starts in a traditional society. It's really subsistence. So you don't have mechanized agriculture, very subsistence. When you say subsistence agriculture, it's agriculture for, you grow your own food. It's not agriculture for a livelihood. You don't sell your produce. So that's the first, very basic, but obviously most societies start that way, subsistence agriculture. And then slowly you start developing some processing, some large-scale agriculture, some machinery. Now you go to the next stage, which is preconditions for takeoff. You haven't really propelled yet, but now it's basically commercial scale agriculture. More mechanized, more processing. Still not a lot of manufacturing. Still agriculture as the predominant industry. But some elements of technology. And even extractives, mining, for example. So it's commercial. Basically, you're selling domestically, let's say from Benguet to Metro Manila, but it's still predominantly agriculture, not other industries. Then because of that income, the society then can afford to build infrastructure. They have money, so they build roads, railways, etc. And they develop a good, solid manufacturing sector. Factories, they have capacity to build machineries, equipments, durable goods, etc., etc. So it's now slowly shifting from agri to a more predominantly manufacturing sector. They say actually, many researchers argue that we are still here because we still don't have a robust manufacturing sector. And we'll study that deeper when we go to the structuralist model. So here, once you're able to really create a better infrastructure that allows you to develop a better manufacturing sector, more machinery, more transit points so that people can go to factories, etc. From the markets, from the agriculture, the rural side, they can sell their produce elsewhere. They can start manufacturing food products, no? Not your basic crops, but really more advanced food products, no? Like chips, etc., or high VCO, virgin coconut oil, for example. So it's really more manufacturing rather than basic agriculture. And then the fourth and fifth stages, really, it's more that manufacturing sector really becoming more vibrant. It's not just manufacturing sector concentrated in textiles, in food, in just a few. No? It's really a diversified and wider industrial and commercial base. It's basically a lot of, it's deep manufacturing, broad manufacturing in the sense that you're manufacturing a lot of different sectors, from footwear to textiles to heavy equipment, from light to heavy machinery, light manufacturing. So it's really diversifying. And for Rosto, he came up with a number, and that's disputed. No? So when manufacturing exceeds 10% of the national GDP, then you're on your way to the maturity stage. You diversify manufacturing, and it's predominantly manufacturing, not agriculture. then that's the time you reach the fourth stage. And then the fifth stage really is because of that, many people are employed, uh, they have livelihood opportunities. Next is mass consumption. Basically because um, people have money and that incentivizes luxury goods or other types of goods. So people keep buying and producers keep producing because there's an incentive to sell because there's a lot of affluent people. And then you start trading internationally. You trade to the US, you trade to Europe, to other international markets. So that in a nutshell is Rostow's stages of growth. And I provided some videos there for you to go deeper into that. I just wanted to summarize that tonight. Oh, sorry. All right, some criticisms. No? Again, the main criticism really is the overlapping features. No, it's not necessarily linear because, for example, in the Philippines, they consider us to be more or less in general on stage 2, almost stage 3, the cusp of stage 3. But in certain regions, we have high mass consumption. There's also significant manufacturing, not really diversified. So it's, some features, even if a society is in a particular stage, there are features that can put them, or certain regions that can put them on a higher stage. So it's not necessarily linear. You can jump as well. No? So in the Philippines, we are jumping in a sense from stage 2 to stage 5 in some aspects, no? And stage 3 even. Again, high mass consumption can be part of different stages. Like in the Philippines, you go to Makati, for example, or BGC, foreigners, they're surprised the first time they're here, they stay in Makati. They're like, I thought this was a developing country. So it depends. So there are nuances within countries. So you can't necessarily generalize. Sorry, I'm just checking if there's someone chatting. And then perception of agriculture. The older models like Rostow, they thought of agriculture as a backward, as something that's not modern. But you have countries like New Zealand, Netherlands, they have good agriculture, agriculturally driven economy, but they mean that you have your economy has a good share in agriculture doesn't mean that you're backward. You can have modern agriculture, you can have agriculture manufacturing as well. And we'll go to that in module 4 when we discuss agriculture versus agribusiness versus value chain. We'll discuss that in module 4. So agriculture is not necessarily equated with being backward. Agriculture can be modern. It can be a good industry, a modern industry, and can be a considered manufacturing as well, food manufacturing. Again, they don't know what this basis was. It's not empirically driven for saying, if you've achieved 10% of investment or manufacturing, then you're on your way to stage 4. It was a bit arbitrary. But the good thing about Rostow, and we'll see this again in Harold Domar, is its emphasis on investment and manufacturing. In all of these models, investment and manufacturing, they're good for the economy. And if you've examined the countries that have really progressed, or like Korea, they really focus on investment and manufacturing. And that's a very important lesson. Forget the entire linear stage model. I want you to focus on this. And forget Harold Domar. But the point is, the emphasis is on investment and manufacturing will propel, there's a chat, no? Will propel economic output. That's fine, Joaquin. You know, could be the PLDT maintenance. No? So I hope I'm not being choppy. No? Again, I'll be recording this. It's being recorded. I'll post this in Canvas. No worries about being late. All right. Let's go to Harold Domar. I don't know. You guys might be too young for this. No? There's this. It's not too mainstream, but there's this comedy series, no, Harold and Kumar. So I just wanted this as an icebreaker. No? So Harold and Kumar, these two gentlemen are not Harold Kumar. They're Harold and Kumar. No? My wife was telling me, don't show this to the class. I'm like, no, it's an icebreaker. No? So to keep people from falling asleep. So this is not Harold Kumar. This is Harold and Kumar. I hope some of you have actually watched Harold and Kumar. They're funny movie, especially Harold and Kumar Goes to White Castle. All right. Thank you, Emilio. I thought of the same thing. Harold and Kumar. So the Harold and Kumar don't look anything like these two. But mind you, no, Kumar, I forget his complete name. He was actually nominated, the one on the right. No? He was appointed by Barack Obama in the last few years as like a presidential advisor on minorities or something. So he's actually a highly educated fellow. Also Kumar, Harold as well. Just a trivia. So these are Harold and Kumar. Okay. All right. Just a refresher. By the way, I don't know if it's still Econ 102 for you guys, basic economics. Can someone tell me what basic economics is now? I think it's Econ 110. Is that correct? Just wanted to verify. What's basic economics now in Ateneo? If someone can just type it in the chat box. Am I right to assume that you guys have taken basic economics? Can someone just verify in the chat box or just speak if you don't mind? Anyone, please? You haven't taken basic economics. Oh, I am so sorry. Have you guys or have you not? Basic economics. Okay, so yeah. Supply and demand, basically, macro, micro. All right. So again, if you haven't taken basic economics, this is something new for you, but it's in Canvas anyway. So again, remember we were talking about the pie, the economy of a country, let's say the Philippines as a pie. And the basic objective is to grow the pie distributed evenly to most people and help them address their other non-income, non-economic needs. But what are the different components of GDP? How is the gross national product? When you think GDP, GNP, it's basically the country's income, to simplify things. There's one way, the most popular way of measuring it is C plus I plus G plus net exports. Consumption is us, private citizens consuming, buying stuff. Investment it's businesses. Actually, consumption also, it's what businesses buy. But investment, it's what the private sector, not government, invest in durable goods. If you saw in Canvas, Harold Domar, investment really means it's equated with the private sector. It's the durable goods or durable inventory. So it's raw material, work in progress here, plant, equipment, heavy machinery, most often than not, also land, rental real estate. So think of this. This is very important. Investment, if you want a synonym, it's durable goods. Think of investment as factories, machinery, equipment. And G is government spending, what government buys. No? So in this pandemic, government bought a lot of PPEs. That's counted as government spending. And then exports. No? How many goods and services we trade outside minus how many imports. No? How many we import from outside. Please stop me if you have any questions. But that's basic macroeconomics. I want you to focus here. That's why I provided the formula. To focus here on investment. So basic algebra, if you increase any of the four factors, four elements, automatically GDP increases. That's basic math. No? So what Harrod and Domar, I keep thinking Kumar, what Harrod and Domar actually wanted to emphasize was investment. This one. So mathematically speaking, if you grow investment, obviously GDP will increase. So two more concepts no, in basic economics. S equals I. Basically, whatever he's saying, basic economics is saying, whatever the country does not consume, it's saved. And if you have savings is basically extra money, you can use that to invest. So in basic economics, usually they equate S equals I, savings equals investment, because that's the money you can flow back to investments. And finally, in basic economics, main factors of production are land, labor, and capital. You guys are management students. Usually when you think of capital, that's money, that's equity that you put down or puhunan. No, it's not. In economic terms, when you read Todaro, capital would usually mean durable goods. So that's a distinction. That's important. So don't confuse the two for this particular course. So Harrod and Domar basically have their own formula. I simplified this. No? So again, in Todaro, there's a complex series of formulas. This is to simplify it. No? Again, if you want to study the math in Todaro, feel free, no? But you don't have to. So he has a formula. It's G, basically economic growth. The percent increase of GDP. That's G. Equals the level of savings, which is tantamount to investment, divided by capital output ratio. What the capital produces. No? Basically, capital output is for spending in capital, what kind of output it produces. So G equals S divided by K, where you can, in a sense, replace S with I, because that's the investment. So K is the amount of capital needed to increase output. So if I have 100 here, in the example, I have 100 billion worth of machinery, and it increases output by 20 million. By it doesn't mean it increases output. Sorry. I don't know, again, if all of you have taken basic economics. When you say marginal, it's the increase, no? It's the marginal increase, no? So when I say it's 100 billion doesn't produce 20 billion. It increases the production by 20 billion. That's what it means. It's marginal. It's the additional production. That's it's trying to measure. So again, when we talk about capital output ratio, it's the amount of capital you increase output, not to produce output. Kasi you can be producing, let's say, no, you can be producing from that 100 million machinery, you can be producing 100 million of goods, worth of goods. But because you introduce technology, the additional 100 million can produce an additional 20 million. That's what capital output ratio is trying to measure. Okay, I hope that's clear. No? But you can ask me again if I'm not being clear. Because there's a difference between what you produce, what that machinery produces, and what that machinery can additionally produce, can increase production by. Okay? So for example, if that machinery increases additional investment, increases output by 20 million, the capital output ratio is 5. And if the level of savings is 10%, that becomes investment. Basic math, G equals S divided by K, then your G, or increase in GDP, increase of economic growth, is 2%. So that's the basic formula. Now we discuss these two elements further. Harold Domar, again, emphasizes two important things. The level of savings, which translates to investment, and the second is the productivity of capital. The bang for the buck. Basically, if you want to simplify capital output ratio, it's bang for the buck. If you can produce more with less, much better. That's the basic concept of capital output ratio. So before that, let's discuss savings. So he's saying, if a country can save more, consume less, and then use that money to invest more, that's good. Because if that happens, if a country can increase savings, consume less, then you convert that into investment, and that can grow GDP. So let's revisit the previous example. 2% lang yung GDP growth, the increase in GDP or economic output. It's 2% because savings is 10% and the capital output ratio is 5. That was the previous example. If we increase this 10% to 15%, then because of math, G now becomes 3% because 15 divided by 5. Easy algebra, 3%. So that's one way to boost the pie, to enlarge the pie. You increase savings and then you translate that into investment in durable goods because the machinery produces something. These different things produce goods and services. So, here we discuss an important thing. Not so much that for this point, he wasn't really interested in the formula itself, but he was trying to make a point. One is the savings. Two is another way to grow the economy is not just to focus on investing in capital, but making sure that that capital you invest is very productive. Is highly productive. And how do you do that? Now, I want to emphasize one thing. Technology. Now, imagine if, kanina, di ba? Earlier, we said, for example, if you had 100 million and that increases output by 20 million, imagine if the same machinery, but with advanced technology, increases output by 50 million, it's more productive, Then, simple arithmetic, and this is real, It's not just basic arithmetic. Your GDP will actually grow. Because even with the same cost, but it has more advanced technology, you can produce more. So it's not necessarily just the cost of investment. It's the quality of investment. If you invest in high technology machinery, you can be more productive and you can grow the pie even more. You know, it's more bang for the buck. So he was emphasizing two things. You find a way to increase savings so that you can invest them into capital, durable goods. But the second point is not just any capital. Hopefully, the capital you're investing in will be really productive. And that's where technology comes into play. The more you introduce advanced technology, the more productive your economy becomes. Just stop me, if you have questions. I'm trying to, some of these are complex concepts, and some of you have not taken basic economics yet, so bear with me. I'm trying to simplify things, but if something is not clear to me, just let me know. All right, one of the criticisms of Harold and Domar is he was thinking that, he did not even acknowledge people, the workers or the citizens working on the machineries. What if they're not sufficiently educated? What if you buy a lot of sophisticated machinery, but the people don't know how to use them? They haven't finished high school, and it's too complex for them. They're not productive. So that's one of the major criticisms of Harold Domar. There are more. As I indicated in Canvas, the assumption that countries can just easily save, that's actually hard as well, especially for developing countries. Because you're poor already. So as we said, the poor, even as a person, if you're poor, majority of what you earn, you already consume. You save less. So telling a poor country that you can really save more, that's hard. So that's one of the criticisms. But I wanted to focus on this. The other major criticism really is labor productivity. Research has shown it's not only your machineries, your capital, your productive capital that can really boost economic growth. You also have to focus on people. That's why there's also a term in economics that's called total factor productivity. So it basically tries to measure how productive all the different factors of production are. In economics, the land, labor, and capital are the inputs you need to produce goods and services. So when you say factor of production, land, labor, capital, it's basically the inputs you need. The inputs you need to produce certain things. Harold Domar only focused on this. What about labor? So TFP, again, you don't really have to remember the math, but it's basically an inverse, no? Kasi the capital output, the capital is in the numerator, in the denominator, it's output. Here's the opposite naman. It's output divided by the total input. Not just capital anymore, but both labor and capital. So this is a simplified arithmetic formula. But for labor, that's a lot of elements. For capital, that's a lot of elements. And the important thing, I don't know if you've heard of this term yet, human capital. If you have capital productivity for machinery, this is basically the equivalent for us, for people. It's basically trying to measure productivity of people. So it's defined by OECD. I'll say this out loud. It's the knowledge, this is in Canvas too. It's the knowledge, skills, competencies, and attributes embodied in individuals that facilitate the creation of personal, social, and economic well-being. Basically, if you're healthy, your brain power is at its peak. So if you're well educated, then you can be more productive. You can do more, and you can be paid more actually. So human capital is usually related to health, nutrition, education. It's really, if you go back to your capabilities approach, it's it's what will actualize you, you know, as a to your full potential. So human capital actually, if you think about CBMS, your different non-income parameters, it's all that. It's what a person needs to be fully productive, to realize its full potential. Imagine if there's someone smart but did not finish college and could have been, an excellent programmer. Sayang, di ba? So that's what human capital is all about. It's giving each person. That's why again, development as freedom. No? We're trying to equalize opportunities, not incomes, not the wealth, but opportunities to actually uh, uh, realize each person's potential. So human capital is related to the labor part of total factor productivity. If your capital has advanced technology, it's more productive. If your people are well fed, well nourished, highly educated, they're also productive. So if you have productive capital, productive workers, you rest assured you'll have a very you'll have superior economic growth. That's the point. So that's why it's also important to criticize the weakness of Harold Tomar. I like its emphasis, but it's good to also focus on its weakness because there is an important element there. So remember that. For you to really grow your economy, focus on the two important factors of production. Yes, integrate advanced technology, but at the same time, focus on people. Make sure they're well fed and they're highly educated. So again, in the Korean example, if they're not well educated, how the hell can they use the advanced technology if they're not trained well? So yeah, so the lessons from both Harold Domar and Rostow, it's really good that they focus on investment because investment-led growth, as most economists, is really preferred because it's more sustainable. Because if it's consumption-driven, they will uh, you can research this further. No, we don't really have to discuss it, but the Philippines is considered as a consumption-driven economy, not investment-led, because it's really us, just buying stuff. Yes, that grows the economy because again, you cannot consume something that is not produced. So it's still good, no? But what is more sustainable is investment because investment is sort of a virtuous cycle, not vicious, virtuous cycle because you invest, you produce, and then people consume, and then the earnings can be flowed back again into investment plus the savings. So you invest again, you keep producing. So it's more sustainable because it keeps producing. Diba? So you research most developed countries, they're actually investment led. Their economies are investment led, not consumption led. But they can consume a lot, no? But they're still investment led. You can research that on your own. That's really an interesting topic. But that's more for advanced economics classes as well, macroeconomics. And in terms of investment, it's not just the quality, it's not just the technology, but Rostow was also advocating for diversification of manufacturing. It's not just sticking to one, but also make sure that you invest in many sectors, no? And that makes you more productive in different sectors. Diversification, as you'll learn or as you have learned in your business courses, is actually good. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. And again, one of the weaknesses is on people. No? So Harold Domar and Rostow did not really focus on people. But here, how do you make citizens more productive? Education and health. Also in Rostow, it did not really emphasize that. And lastly, and this is an additional tidbit for you. This is not in Canvas. The weakness of Harrod and Tomar is that he only basically emphasized savings as the source of money for investment. But that's not true. He was thinking more in terms of a country not engaging with its neighbors or not engaging internationally. Investment can also come from outside, not just internal. It can come from savings, yes, domestically, but there is also foreign investment. You know, all of your call centers, your BPOs, that's not domestic investment. That's actually not our savings, but it's other country savings that's invested here. So Harold and Domar did not even, or Rostow did not even acknowledge that. But that's an important tidbit. We don't just need to save, we can attract investments from foreign countries to boost our investment. So no questions? I'll stop here for a minute. Drink some water in case you have questions. All right, I don't see questions now. So the next thing in Canvas was South Korean case. Of course, it wasn't about K-pop. Of course, a lot of people, when they think of Korea, it's K-pop. My wife actually likes a lot of, not K-pop, but Netflix. No? We've probably, during the pandemic, finished at least 10 Netflix series. But I won't discuss the case of South Korea because many of you still haven't written anything in the discussion board. So I won't preempt your answers. So I just wanted you to, when you watch the video about South Korea in Canvas, think of all of these things, especially this line as well. Both what Harold, Domar, and Rostow were talking about, as well as the weaknesses or the gaps. And then the last thing that we talked about was neoclassical. Neoclassical is basically going back to supply and demand. Because in supply and demand, it's basically saying, the buyers and the sellers, they act in their own self-interest, and eventually they will reach equilibrium. They will reach a good equilibrium. Here, if you've had basic economics, I hope really that most of you have had, you will probably forget a lot of things, but you will always remember the invisible hand. And this is Adam Smith was famous for this. And most capitalists will always have Adam Smith as their idol of some sort. So he said in his 1700s book, they call it The Invisible Hand, The Wealth of Nations. That's the book. The rich consume little more than the poor, and in spite of their natural selfishness and rapacity, they divide with the poor the produce of all their improvements. They are led by an invisible hand to make nearly the same distribution of the necessaries of life, which would have been made had the earth been divided into equal portions among all its inhabitants, and thus, without intending it, without knowing it, advance the interests of society and afford means to the multiplication of the species. So basically, he was advocating more or less for laissez-faire. Laissez-faire means let them be. Basically, let market forces be. Let the private sector be. Let the businesses be. Let the consumers be. If that happens, basically there is as if an invisible hand orchestrating, and then because of both sets of actors, the private sector and the consumers, because of them acting in their own self-interest, eventually that will lead to equilibrium of supply and demand, and that will end up with with society being just and equitable. The private sector will eventually provide for all the needs, and they will eventually distribute it evenly to the poor, even, or to everyone. So it will lead to optimal resource allocation and distribution. I don't know how far you've gone in the Canvas course, but is that true? Will it lead to this? There's an invisible hand, that leads private sector to build and distribute them to the citizens, or is it more this? Does capitalism lead to, more inequality or people left out? That's a question. We won't answer that. I'll answer that in the next slide. The risk is if you just leave the private sector, or just let society be, there's what we call market failure and externalities. If you've had your basic economics, this is also discussed there. Externalities, basically, that's something that the most common, it can be positive or negative. It's something that a business or a person does that has negative effects to other people or positive effects. So the most popular example is pollution. There's a video there in Canvas. Pollution. So there's a factory because they want to produce without caring for the environment. People who are not even, engaged in that factory, they suffer because they get bad lungs or something else, and that's an externality. You're not privy to that operation or to that enterprise, and yet you suffer. Positive externality naman is it's good, no? So there is the private sector, let's say, builds a road for their own benefit, but they make it publicly available. Other people benefit, even though they're not necessarily part of that enterprise. So usually it's public goods that are considered as positive externalities. It has benefits even to those who are not part of that initial operation. So it could be good or bad. Market failure is all about negative externalities. Sometimes when you leave private sector to themselves, they can have pollution and other negative externalities. So you still have to regulate. Another market failure is you can't just let the private sector do everything. Sometimes there are inherently goods and services that's supposed to be done by the government, like defense, military. That's really inherently for government. Private sector can provide bits and pieces, the uniforms, the tanks, the arms, but defense itself is a function of government. So it's not necessarily a role for the private sector. So there are things like that. Lack of production by the business sector. Let's say in the far-flung areas, the private sector can't make money if they build a cell tower there just to serve 10 households. So in those cases where there's no market for the private sector, the government has to step in. Usually those are what we call last mile challenges. And then the last is sometimes, there are big conglomerates. They get so big that they abuse their market size. So for example, if the most common here is a large company, they want to price out their competitors. Let's say, for example, SM, they want to price out their competitors in the supermarket. For some period, they will sell their goods really low at a loss, until and then get all the market share. So what happens is the customers of their competitors shift to SM, they lose, they fold up, and then SM, once all the customers are with them, no more competitors, they can jack up the price again. That's an example. Not saying SM does that. So that's an example of abuse of dominant position. You can read more about that in the short self-learning module of the Philippine Competition Commission. Because private sector can provide a lot of goods, but in some cases they don't. Some cases they abuse. They abuse the environment, they abuse their strength as well. So, I ended with that chapter in Canvas by saying, is capitalism bad? You've probably seen in the news when you were a bit younger. There's this huge Occupy Wall Street. No, that's basically a call to change capitalism. In some cases, in the extreme, they were saying, no, capitalism is bad. We should reverse course. No more capitalism. That's totally bad. Actually, no. We're not saying that capitalism is bad. We're just saying that in some cases, as back in module 1, we said, no, private sector actually provides a lot of expertise, innovation, cutting edge technology. They provide a lot of good stuff, better than the government actually. But in many cases, in some cases, government needs to keep them in check. Make sure the markets don't run wild, so to speak. Preventive, they should set rules so that private sector doesn't become tempted to abuse their power or their strength. And second, curative, or to mitigate. Once they've done certain things, make sure that governments can regulate or even penalize. So my thinking is capitalism is okay. It produces a lot of good. But government must make sure that they don't abuse and they're a force for the good. So last, I want to end this. I did not include this in Canvas. This is my own worldview. I'm not forcing you to take this worldview. A lot of Jesuits, a lot of Athenians have this advocacy. It's called social democracy. Basically, it's socialism or social justice within the framework of capitalist democracy. It acknowledges that capitalism is good, but we want more policies that don't forget the poor, that actually emphasizes income distribution and regulation of the business sector, so that to make sure that they don't abuse. So it's basically a country that has capitalism as its main framework, has democracy like us, but they make sure that there's a lot of social welfare provisions, human capital, addressing the capabilities. A lot of societies actually aspire to have this, but it's not easy. So I take this worldview. This is, for me, a balanced one. I'm against socialism or communism because that's basically the government doing everything, deciding on everything. No, we want the private sector to innovate and provide because they're more efficient in many ways. But we want government making sure that whatever is produced also redounds to the poor and the marginalized. So that's that. No, I don't know what time it is. I hope that wasn't too long. I tried to take some time to discuss some of the more technical concepts. I'll stop there. That's the first half of Module 3. We'll discuss the second half next week. Again, if you have questions, you can ask me now or email me, or you can have a consultation as well. Any questions? I will end my screen now. Okay. Any questions? Sorry if some were a bit technical. No, but I tried to simplify things, especially for those of you who haven't really studied basic economics yet. So again, Todaro and some of the readings might be too technical. So again, the purpose of these synchronous sessions is really to explain more and to the extent possible simplify. Because what I want really to do is not to turn you guys into economics majors, but distill what really are the important elements that we have to remember so that we grow the economy more uh, and we make sure that that growth redounds to the poorest. And that's the beauty again of human capital. It's giving opportunities to everyone, including the poor, at the same time growing the pie. All right. So within the end of by the end of the week, I'll uh, I'll post the assignments. I'll randomize the selection of the teams. Uh, I'll follow the NSTP groupings for assignment 2. Once you get your assigned law or bill, I hope you start reading on that. I know it's a challenging assignment, but I have full trust based on what I've seen so far in your discussion boards uh, and the assignments. I've read a few. Really, I know you guys are up to. You can easily do this. Not easily, but you can really do this. Again, if you're too shy, if you have concerns, let your beadles know. You can reach me through them as well. In one case, no, uh, uh, one there were a few who were complaining, oh, why was the deadline Sunday? Apparently there was a memo. Sorry, I didn't know about that. And they were shy to approach me directly, so they went through the beta. So if you have concerns like that, by all means, let me know. If you're too shy, go through Joaquin or Monica. So okay na tayo. You guys might be hungry. Again, next week, I'm planning to go back to 5 to 6:30. No? Sorry, I just had to take care of a personal matter this afternoon. That's why we made it 6. Okay na? All right, I don't see any questions. Just continue trudging through Module 3. Thanks for the patience. Thanks for bearing with me. Again, I'll post this on Canvas as well as the deck. Have a good evening, everyone. Okay, enjoy the rest of the week. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you,
Thank
sir.
you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.